Hello and welcome to Romdo Sidequest. This is a laser-focused spin-off show of the original Romdo, and the intention is to have bite-sized versions of the main podcast. This is kind of like the What Are You Playing section, except it's more concentrated. Essentially, we recap on what we have been trying out and just ramble about that for a few minutes to an hour. Anyway, today's topic is The Witcher 3, and I'm Eric, and this is Jim.
Hello, hello. Hello.
I've been playing The Witcher 3 for 40 hours, and Jim has been playing for a bit longer.
Yeah, I have about probably somewhere north of 100 hours by this point. I don't really know, because the game says I've been playing for like 30 days non-stop, because for some reason when I put my PS4 into suspend mode, the game keeps counting it as I'm playing, so...
Okay.
Definitely have above 100 hours somewhere. I haven't actually finished the main story, because I've been too distracted just running around the world doing anything and everything.
Mostly playing Gwent, I guess.
Actually not as much Gwent as you'd think. I do like Gwent, but haven't been playing it that much. I still need to play the physical card version, because I now have all 4 physical card decks as well.
Okay. I guess neither of us have read the novels.
No. I did read a bunch of articles before I started playing The Witcher 3 about basically recapping of what happened in the previous games, since I haven't played either of the 2 previous ones, nor read any of the novels, so at least I have some knowledge of the world in general that it takes place in.
The thing about the novel universe is that they're all prequels to what's happening in the games, and the game universe is, according to the author himself, he thinks that it's kind of stupid, because at the end of the novels, what happens is that Geralt dies.
Oh, right.
And the first game starts off from there, where he didn't die, but he lost his memory. And
okay.
Yeah, the author just kind of thinks that's stupid, but yeah. So he gave the permission to use the universe, but he doesn't really think it's. He just kind of thinks it's stupid.
Nice.
Yeah, and
that's a good start.
Well, the thing is that the first game in the Witcher series is quite different actually from the other games. It's based on the Neverwinter Nights engine. I think it's called the Aurora engine, and it's essentially this kind of mouse-driven. The controls are closer to an RTS than anything else, and it has some of the quirks of that engine. The engine is designed for Dungeons and Dragons, so some of the quirks are kind of transferred from the engine to the Witcher universe, and then some of those features aren't anymore there. The second game is much closer to this one. The combat is actually kind of ass in that one. There's no lock-on option, which is interesting. It makes combat a lot harder than...
Interestingly enough, I rarely use the lock-on feature in Witcher 3.
Okay, I use it a lot.
Fair enough. I find it tends to get in the way more, because I'm then locked onto that enemy, and it's more difficult to move the way I want to, but I don't know. That's just me.
And yeah, some of that. And basically what happens in The Witcher 2 is that the tutorial part of the game is actually the hardest part, because you don't know shit about how the game works, and then it throws a boss at you. And if you don't know the mechanics, then you're gonna get killed quite quickly, which is also nice.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. Tutorial was just die.
Yeah, and they've toned it down a bit since they've made it a bit easier for the beginners to start the game, but it's still pretty much the hardest part compared to the rest of the game. But for the most part, the Witcher 2 is a lot closer to The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is a supercharged version of the previous game, I think.
Nice.
And so, well, as a complete noob to the series before this, what's your take on this?
Well, like I said, I have some idea of what happened in the previous game by reading a couple of articles. I think Kotaku had a essential reading before you play Witcher 3 kind of thing. So I had some idea of what was going on. But I quite like the story overall. It's interesting. It's sometimes it feels like they haven't maybe done enough to make you feel for why Geralt loves Ciri so much and why he would basically go to the ends of the world and give up his own life to save her and protect her. I mean, the context is there, so you kind of know why, but it feels a little bit sometimes like they haven't done enough to show it to you, if you know what I mean. It's like, here's a character, here's another character. First character really cares about the second character. I mean, there are a lot of character building between the two characters as well in the early parts of the game, but maybe it could have done with a little bit more of it. But aside from that, the characters are generally quite fleshed out. I love Geralt as a character. Even his horrible dad jokes and all of it is just amazing and hilarious for the most part. I don't know, just his general attitude towards the world is quite nice.
The problem, I guess, is that it's kind of an expectation that you know the universe before you jump in. But the interesting part with the Witcher games is that they don't actually introduce Ciri or Yennefer until the third game. So you kind of you've played these two games and there's a mention of Yennefer, kind of this kind of passing mention, but you never see the character. And then in the third game, especially if you've been waiting for the third game for a long time, which so in between sequels you kind of forget things.
Yeah.
You start wondering, who the fuck are these characters? Why should I care?
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
they just come out of nowhere. It turns out they are important characters in the novels. But as someone who hasn't read them, they kind of just pop out of nowhere if you've played the previous games.
A little bit. I mean, when I started playing The Witcher 3, I mean, one of the first inventory items you have is a letter from Yennefer, and if I recall, it seems to convey quite well that there's some romantic connection between the two. So you're kind of have to use your imagination a little bit to properly get a feel for what's actually going on between them, but it's still a decent intro, I think, to what's happening, because the game just opens with Geralt looking for Yennefer, kind of thing, and you're like, okay, so I guess it's someone he loves based on this letter, so kind of just balloons from there.
Yeah, I think maybe. I mean, but for someone who has been playing the games and then just kind of is the game kind of expects that you know these characters already.
Yeah.
But if you just play the games, then you don't know them, which is an interesting choice. There's no build up for that.
Although, if I recall, with the first two games, because he lost his memory in the very beginning of the first game, and finally at the end of the second game, he regains all his memories. So if you at least remember that part, you might be more expecting that there's going to now be things I don't know much about, because all of a sudden the main character has all his old memories back. So you've kind of been playing an amnesiac for two games. So the world is obviously going to change a bit once he has all his old memories back.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your... I mean, you were playing a lot of Gwent. I don't think it's that special when I've been playing it.
Fair enough. I quite like it. I mean, it is quite tactical. I mean, I've never played Hearthstone or any other such kind of card game. I mean, the closest I've ever gotten is just poker or Go Fish or something, like real normal card games. But I really like the way Gwent is laid out, and generally how you have to play as well, and how you use some of the special ability cards. You can come up with some pretty crazy combinations, and at the same time you can be exposed to some pretty crazy and devastating combinations of cards by your opponent. So I mean, I find it highly addictive, and a lot of fun. So admittedly, I haven't used the other decks that much. I've mostly been sticking with the main deck you start with, because I kind of got that one up and quite powerful really early on, and got a few good tactics that work decently well against most situations. I do have to adapt though, depending on certain situations. So if, for example, the opponent has the monster deck, I might need to try to stock up on things that can basically scorch or destroy enemy cards on the front lines, because the monster deck has a tendency to drop one card on the front lines and it pulls in 4 other cards on the front lines as well. So they can kind of obliterate you by just placing a couple of cards. But overall, it's a very, very fun game. I quite like it. So whenever I run into an NPC I haven't played Gwent against in the past, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll just play Gwent now for 5 minutes, regardless of what I'm in the middle of.
I just like how, for example, Siri is a card. Like, I mean, one of the most powerful cards in the game, and
Yep.
yeah, and it's kind of silly. I mean, thinking that some of these poor bastards, I mean, they are poor as fuck, but they can spend all their time playing Gwent, and then these guys have no idea who Siri is, even though they've been playing a card game where she is the most powerful card in the game.
Yeah, true. That is a bit weird when you look at it from a context of random peasant in the world. Like, who the fuck is Siri? Why is she so powerful in my Gwent deck? Kind of thing. Yeah, that is a bit weird. I haven't really thought of Gwent properly in that context. To me, it's like, okay, they're playing Gwent now, and now I'm in this other reality where I'm just playing Gwent kind of thing. When I play, I don't necessarily directly connect it to the events and lives of the NPCs in the world in a strange way. So it hasn't really felt that disconnecting for me. Maybe because I never really connected it initially in my mind.
Well, I just think it's weird. It would be just as weird if I found out that somewhere in the US they were playing a card game where I was one of the cards and I happened to be one of the better cards in the game. It would be just, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, that would be quite strange indeed. So, admittedly though, I didn't really get the Siri card till quite late in the game. So, because I spent so much time just doing all kinds of side quests and just randomly running around the world. So I think it was like a month ago I got the Siri and Geralt cards that have 15 attack power.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
And, well, the other mini game in Witcher 3 is the horse races. And I didn't enjoy them at all.
Yeah, they can be tricky. The mechanics can be a bit strange, but I mean, they're not horrible, but they're not necessarily great either. It's acceptable. I mean, personally, I did enjoy them, but there's definitely issues with the mechanics, especially when you're trying to go across a narrow bridge and the horse just decides to randomly stop because there's a 1 centimeter splinter sticking out of the ground off the bridge or something. Then it's a bit like, what the hell are you doing? But for the most part, I kind of enjoyed them. So,
to me, it felt like I was controlling a Russian tank from the Second World War. It was that bad.
Fair enough. So you were playing on PC, right?
I'm playing on PC, yeah.
Okay, decent frame rate, or is it bad frame rate?
The frame rate is decent. That's not the issue. The issue is just I mean, especially on a mouse and keyboard, it just feels awful.
Oh, yeah, mouse and keyboard might make it pretty horrible. I'm playing on PS4 myself with the controllers. I would almost suggest you get a controller and hook that up to your PC to play it.
Well, I have a gazillion 360 controllers lying around, so I could play with one of those.
I'd say do it.
usually it's a PC RPG, so I'm gonna play mouse and keyboard damage.
True, however, it started as a PC RPG in Witcher 1, and by this point, they're kind of more focused on controllers. So if I recall, even in the early demo, when the press demo events, when they invited press to their studio, they had them playing it on the PC, but with a 360 controller. That was it. Here's the screen, here's the box, here's the 360 controller. Have fun, kind of thing. So they definitely had the controller in mind when they were designing it, which I guess makes sense, because I would imagine the largest portion of their sales came from console rather than PC.
I know. I've been to preview events where they've been showing off PC FPSs, and they are kind of like, here, have a 360 controller. We can't bother showing you what the with the mouse and keyboard control is like. That usually is a warning sign, though.
Yeah, true. That for a first-person shooter on PC specifically, that is a bad sign. If it's a cross-platform console, whatever, then it's more acceptable.
Well, it was a console. They usually are cross-platform games at that point, and they're showing it off like. Anyway, the other thing I didn't quite enjoy was the armor system, or the equipment system you have. For one, the equipment is just ugly. I mean, I didn't feel. Every now and then I feel like having a fashionable character, and then with The Witcher 3 doesn't let you do that. All the costumes are ugly.
Especially in the early parts of the game, yes. For a good 15 hours, I was running around literally looking like a fucking clown. It was ridiculous. But in the later parts of the game, at least, especially once you start getting diagrams for Witcher armor, some of the Witcher armor actually looks pretty damn cool. If you gather the diagrams and all the materials and stuff, you need to have them crafted. A couple of them look a bit bulky, and you basically just end up looking like a fat beer belly Homer Simpson or something, but some of them are pretty cool looking as well. So I haven't collected all of them yet. I mean, my character is level 29 at the moment, so there's still the master crafted armor sets, which are require level 34. But no, some of them are pretty cool looking, at least. But yeah, the inventory system in general as well is pretty bad and slow and very cumbersome to deal with. So
the other thing I didn't like about the equipment system is they are locked behind your level. So if I find something cool early on in the game, turns out I can't use it till I gain 20 levels, which sucks. At least in some games you have stat requirements like strength or whatever, and this just requires okay, you need to be level 40 to use this, and that's not too fun. Apparently,
because I remember watching an interview with one of the developers shortly before the game came out, and when you find a armor piece out of a chest, if that armor piece is higher level than you, the armor piece level will be lowered, so you can use it straight away if it comes out of a chest, for example. However, the same does not apply when you find diagrams to craft stuff. Then it's just this diagram is for a piece that's level 30. It doesn't matter what level you are. But if you come across a chest that just has a random sword in it that's level 15 and you're level 5, apparently the sword will be lowered to level 5. So you can basically just use it straight away. And I think that's true, because I can't recall ever opening a chest, getting a random sword, and it being too high level for me to use. Generally, it'll either be better than the sword I had, but it won't require me to be a higher level than I am. Most of the time, it's shittier than the level I am. Especially once I started crafting the Witcher specific armor and swords, because they're generally quite a bit better than everything else you find in the game.
Yeah, I just don't enjoy the idea of finding something and then not being able to use it 20 levels until 20 levels later.
Yeah, agreed.
It kind of also ruins the sense of exploration, because you find stuff, but it's useless to you.
True. I mean, I think I found a diagram for a sword that required level 40 when I was level 4 or something, which was a bit like, Jesus Christ. But at the same time, I've also found diagrams for things that were around the same level as I were, so I maybe couldn't use it the same minute, but like half an hour later, I'd level up, and I'm like, oh yeah, sweet, I can craft this thing now. So, but at the same time, I kind of think it adds a bit more of excitement when you level up, though, as well, because you don't just level up and like, oh look, I'm a new level, I can beat some harder enemies now. It's also a bit like, oh, I'm a new level now. What diagrams do I have that I can now actually craft and use? So every time you level up, it's a bit of like a, oh sweet, let's see what new cool gear I can make and actually use kind of thing, which is nice as well. I guess it's a bit of a balance. You can't use stuff straight away when you find it, but instead every time you level up, you get more excitement from that, because all of a sudden you have all these diagrams and stuff that you can now actually use.
I actually like the way the earlier Diablos did it, where you can find that kind of stuff, like an armor that you can't use right away. But if you had, if the next time you leveled up, you could just, okay, I need 5 more strength for this, so I'll add these points. And it didn't matter, it didn't usually matter what class your character was in, so cool. It was just based on what your stats were.
Yeah.
Of course, some equipment was better for some builds and whatever else, and then the game became about then now it's completely optimized. So if you want a certain build, then you have these guides that tell you level by level what to do.
Okay.
But when in the early game, it was interesting just figuring stuff out, what works, what doesn't, and yeah, that's the part I liked that I don't get to have in this game, because it's just either the game scales the equipment for me if I pick it up from the chest, or then I get a diagram that can be just as useless if it's that far away.
Yeah,
but otherwise, yeah, I come from with the previous 2 Witchers. I like the combat. It's not platinum or Japanese developer level stuff, but it's serviceable. It's better than usual in these games.
Yep. Yeah, no, I personally really like the combat.
And what's nice, and that ties into something I'm going to talk about later, which is the immersion, is that when you go around and you go around places, it's not just you are in this area, so there are only level 10 enemies. There could be a level 30 enemy waiting somewhere, and you can just you can be cocky and try to fight it, or you can just go, oh fuck, and run away, which is what you should do probably most of the time. Just go, oh fuck, and run away.
Yes, but at the same time, you don't have to. You can try. I remember in the early parts of the game, I was level 14 or something, and I ran into a enemy that was like level 17, I think. And I figured, screw it, let's see if I can take him down. So it took a couple of attempts and deaths, but I did get him in the end. He could basically 2-hit kill me, while I needed to hit him about 50 odd times. So as long as I just stayed out of his way and kept wailing at him with a few bombs and sword slashes and stuff, he eventually went down. Took a lot of effort, but it was very rewarding.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things I really like about the game. So you enter an area, you see that you're this level, and the area itself is meant to be this level, but it can still have some surprises for you. And it doesn't, and there are things that are actually dangerous, which is a good thing.
Yes, it's something I quite like about it as well, because generally, I mean, when I started playing the game, I didn't play on normal difficulty. I played on hard the first like 20 hours, and then I bumped it up to hardest, which is Death March, I think the hardest difficulty is called, and hard is like blood and broken bones or something funny. But I figured, let's try it on hard, because I read a couple of articles saying that you should probably try it on hard so you get accustomed to the combat early on, because it will be much more rewarding if you properly understand the combat rather than just button mash your way through everything. So I figured, okay, let's try that. And what I liked about it was that every encounter, even like early on when I was like level 4, I could still easily get killed by 1 or 2 level 1 enemies if I was careless. And if I was just out and about exploring the world, that meant that I lost all progress since the last point I manually saved or completed some kind of thingy that triggered an autosave, because the game rarely autosaves on its own. Unless you're doing something specific like finishing a quest or something. If you're just walking around the world, exploring, opening random chests and stuff, it doesn't autosave. So it felt kind of exhilarating, like, okay, every enemy here could potentially kill me. I gotta be careful, I gotta be on the tip of my toes, gotta dodge, gotta avoid, gotta block, gotta use the signs, the magic spells effectively, the bombs, everything kind of thing. And it was quite fun learning that early on. But at the same time, it did have the side effect that I started manually saving whenever I approached any enemies. So as soon as I'm like, okay, there's some enemies over there, I'm going to fight them. Let's prepare my sword with the correct oil so I inflict extra damage on this type of enemy, and then just save and then go in and attack. Because worst case, I could just be killed instantly because I was careless, or 3-4 enemies manage to randomly attack me at the same time, which could just take your whole health down straight away and you just die. So hence I got in this habit of saving all the time, for better or worse. But at the same time, when you get through a fight, at basically just holding on to the last sliver of health, it's very satisfying.
That's the PC approach to role-playing games. The thing that I kind of had to disable was all the hints it had, because the problem I have with the game is that
Right.
it's if you have the hints on, it's kind of overbearing with. It's kind of like with an Assassin's Creed, where you have the map full of shit. It's like you can do all of this shit.
Yeah.
And I just decided fuck it, I'll disable all of it, because for one, it adds to the immersion, because I can just. I need to search for things, and what the game does give you, it gives you good hints on where to go, so you don't actually need the breadcrumbs to find NPCs or find whatever you have to slay that time. So it's actually good with that. It's the issue is that if you don't disable all of that, then you have this huge amount of tips that you don't need. At least I don't feel like I needed any of that.
Yeah, I disabled quite a few UI things myself as well, if I recall.
Do you have the breadcrumbs on?
Breadcrumbs being, is that the trail on the minimap? Oh yeah, I think I have that on. I rarely use it.
It's just at some point in the beginning, I felt like I was just looking at the minimap more than the actual game. So then that's when I disabled it.
Yeah. So if I do replay it on the PC at some point, eventually when I get a gaming PC as well, I might try just disabling most things, even the minimap, just for curiosity's sake. Not to mention I should hopefully have a good idea of what the world is like, and where to go at that point. But yeah, could be interesting.
The other thing that's interesting that they had in Witcher 2 also, which is that, so in Witcher 2 you had actually from the first game on, you had consequences. The first game, it was the long-term consequences were there, but you could just kind of scum them. In the second game, they kind of made them harder. There's a point in the second game, quite early on, where you have a choice, and basically because of that choice, the game kind of branches off to 2 different plot lines. So to get an idea of what's actually happening in the game, completely you have to play it twice, because you have these 2 plot lines. That was interesting.
Yeah, those 2 plot lines, don't they even take place in like completely separate world maps and everything? So depending on what choice you make, if you only play one once, there's a whole other map you never see.
There's this part where you kind of are in the same areas, but you are seeing it from a different viewpoint, which is an interesting way to do it. Like, but yeah, that's what happens there. The Witcher 3 also has these choices, and the nice thing about the choices in these games is that you make a choice, but you actually don't see the consequence until way after that. So you can't. So usually you can't just, okay, I have a choice. I'm gonna save now, and then I'm gonna check one choice.
Yeah.
Okay, I get 200 gold from this choice. Let's load it. Load the other. Load it again. Check the other choice. I get 400 gold from this one. I'm going with the 400 gold. That's what happens with BioWare games quite often.
True. Yeah. No, it's something I really like as well about The Witcher. There's quite a few times where I'm just, here's two choices. I'm like, well, I'm not sure which one seems like the good or the bad one. Is there a good or a bad one? And often I found that there is no right choice. Every choice basically brings with it both good things and bad things, and you won't generally know until many hours later. So, which, yeah, like you said, it kind of gives you the feeling of you're in this world, you live in this world, and you just make choices and then roll with the punches as they come based on what choices you made.
Yeah, that's actually pretty much what I enjoy, and actually what I hope a lot of other RPGs would do. Of course, it's kind of hard to do that kind of thing, but the BioWare method, I used to champion the BioWare method, but I think this method is actually a lot better, even though it might require a lot more, maybe not more, it might require a lot more work to have this kind of long-term consequences of what you've done before.
Yeah, it's definitely very nice. I mean, I haven't played many BioWare games myself. I think I only have like 40 hours or so in Dragon Quest Inquisition, but it really felt like I made a choice, here's what happens, and then that's the end of it. While Witcher, it's like, I've made 10, 15 choices over the past 6 hours, and I'm still not sure what's come out of it, or you make one choice here, and then 3 hours later, it actually massively affects what you can do and what choices you end up with in another situation later on. And in some cases as well, there's even side quests that you could completely just skip and ignore that actually changes and has a massive effect on the main storyline, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So, anything else? I mean, do you have a favorite scene you can tell? I have one at least.
Favorite scene? Yes, I definitely have a favorite scene. It happened quite recently actually, so it's kind of towards the later parts of the game at least. So maybe you go first.
My favorite one was when they were actually kind of they were kind of making fun of the ads for the game. There's this guy that said that no, what are you doing? Killing monsters.
Yeah, too. I remember that ad. It was amazing when Vizimir referenced that. Yeah, you mumbled something about killing monsters. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite amazing.
What I find it funny is that they are not taking this. I mean, of course, this is dark fantasy, and it's actually really crappy place to live in. It's it's like Poland today, but in a fantasy world. It's almost the same thing.
No offense to Poland or Polish people, I hope. Yeah, no, I like it because the general humor the characters have is they don't take themselves too seriously, even though they live in a shitty, horrible world, which I guess I would probably be very similar if I lived in that world. I mean, like, yeah, shit, well, yeah, I might die tomorrow, so, yeah, you kind of just roll with it and try to have fun, even if it's some serious shit going down. So I quite adore that in the characters in the game.
But instead, you're just a web developer and you can't die.
Yep. Well, I can die, but not necessarily very easily every single day, just because I walk to Tesco.
Yeah, you can't die doing your job at least. Well,
it's
you
very
can die,
unlikely.
but it's statistically quite improbable.
Yes, exactly.
Let's put it this
that.
way.
Yes. So it's very slim chance that a griffin will come crashing through my window and try to eat me while I'm just sitting here writing some code.
Yeah, but you might be stabbed in the face by an angry client.
Or that. Hopefully not. Thankfully, I mostly work remotely, but that's a different story. So yeah, that was your favorite scene in the game. I'm not sure if you know this, because you might not have gotten this far yet, but there is a scene where Geralt ends up drinking with two other witchers from the Wolf of the School, or the School of the Wolf. And it ends up being a very interesting, roughly 15 minutes of just basically picking some dialogue choices and listening to these guys mumble about drunken stories. And depending on the choices you pick, at least the way I chose it, it ended up with all three of them kind of doing prank calls and wearing ladies' clothes while piss drunk. It was highly entertaining.
Okay, I'm not that far yet.
Yeah, you should. Huh?
Yeah, but good to know that the game encourages sexual deviancy.
Yes, well, you should probably know that by this point already, considering there's hookers and things, for better or worse.
Well, that's normal Polish life.
Well,
or am I being too offensive here?
I don't know, but then again, you're pretty much just try to insult anyone and everyone, including your closest friends, every chance you get. So,
well, that's true. That's always true.
Yep.
Anyway, do we have anything else to cover? I think we're at 45 minutes now.
Yeah, we're 45. I don't know. I mean, is it a game worth playing, worth buying?
Well, sure. I mean, that's it's pretty much, I think, one of the best games of this year.
Yep, definitely agreed. I consider one of the best games I've ever played. Pretty much along with Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye 007, and like Assassin's Creed 2 I really like as well. But yeah, no, it's by far one of my favorite games ever. I mean, I wouldn't have spent over 100 hours and just running around doing stuff. So, and hell, even just due to my love of Assassin's Creed and also trying to see what you can do to glitch games out, I have spent probably about 4 or 5 hours climbing around on rooftops in Novigrad, the main city in the game. You're not supposed to be able to get up on the roofs, but there's a few places where you can kind of manage to climb up on a ledge, and then if you jump right, he kind of like grabs hold of another ledge and you can get high up on the roof. But then you have to be really careful because generally the roofs are very steep, and if you walk a bit uncareful there, you'll just slide off, and generally it'll be high enough that if you do slide, you're gonna die because you just fall and die. But it's a lot of fun trying to treat it like an Assassin's Creed game and just seeing how high you can climb. You definitely want to do a lot of manual saves though, if you're doing that. But it's a lot of fun to glitch into places you're not supposed to be. So.
Well, yeah, I don't think I would put it in my best of all time games. I think in comparison to I mean, the Witcher 3 is a more polished game for sure, but I think I kind of enjoyed the first game a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, and it's the Western RPG used to be my kind of genre, but these days I'm more action oriented. I mean, it's good. It's pretty much the only RPG I've played this year, so I can't actually vouch for any other RPG, at least, and the rest are action games. So yeah,
fair enough.
It's one of the best games of the year. It's an excellent game, but it's also a very different kind of game that I'm usually playing. So it has to be kind of, what I'm saying has to be kind of been, you have to kind of take it with that perspective in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Admittedly, I'm generally not a huge RPG fan myself. I mean, the last year I pretty much almost exclusively played Destiny, and before that I generally tend to like third-person action and shooter games, things like GTA and Assassin's Creed and stuff, but I generally kind of like the whole leveling up system and stuff, but I've never been that gripped with an RPG until The Witcher, really, or Witcher 3 specifically.
Yeah, and after The Witcher 3, basically you have to be willing to let some things slide if you are going back with these games. So The Witcher 2 is an excellent game, I think, but it's also far less polished. So it's also there's lots of what can be called jank in it.
Nice.
And it's I think the Witcher 3 is the first big console title these guys have done. The Witcher 2 was released on consoles, but they were obviously first doing it for PC, and then they had their PC mindset in mind, I think, when they were doing it.
Yes, definitely. I actually remember reading about it, and The Witcher 2 was originally meant to be PC only, and it was interesting because they started development on The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3 at the same time originally. The intent with The Witcher 3 was to make a new graphics engine that would make cross-platform development a lot easier as well, so they could release on consoles, while still intent on making The Witcher 2 just a PC game. Somewhere down the line, though, they ended up cancelling The Witcher 3 development and kind of just ended up retrofitting the engine they had built for The Witcher 2, which then allowed them to make The Witcher 2 both for PC and console easier than what would previously have been possible as well. And if I remember right, they also had some issues with a planned port of the original game for console. They had an external studio working on it, but it just ended up being such a massive pain that they cancelled it after dumping a fuck ton of money into it. It was actually due to that, if I recall, that they cancelled Witcher 3 as it was and just ported what they had of Witcher 2 over to the new engine to release it on console to kind of try to recoup some of the losses they had on the attempt at porting Witcher 1. I could very well be wrong because this is just from memory. I guess we might need to do corrections at some point if I'm wrong.
I actually know this story. The version of the first game that they were doing, it was called the Rise of the White Wolf. That was what it was called.
Oh yes.
And it was going to be on the 360 and the PS3. And that the thing was that the time they were doing this, at one point, so they released the first Witcher, and then they released a whole bunch of enhanced editions on top of the first Witcher. So, which was fine. I mean, if you own the first version of the Witcher, you got all of the updates for free. That was fine. But it kind of made we kind of made it feel like, okay, so these guys are just making enhanced versions of this game and not new games. And they kind of announced this console version when while they were doing that, and they had announced the second game, but they didn't actually have any news regarding it. They were just releasing versions of the first game, so people were kind of worried.
Yeah.
And then it got cancelled. The console port. The console port of the first game, and then The Witcher 2 was released, and then they kind of finally stopped updating the first game. They finally moved forward from that.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, though, I quite admire CD Projekt Red for doing that enhanced edition, because they're like, well, there's more things we want to do with it. There's things we want to fix. There's things we want to make better, and so let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just release it for free to all our existing customers because we care about them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, they did an enhanced edition of The Witcher 2 as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, which is quite cool, especially the fact that if you bought the game previously, oh, here's just an update, and you get the enhanced edition as well. You don't have to buy the new Game of the Year edition like a lot of games do now that includes all the DLC and stuff. However, if you previously bought the game when it came out, then you can't have that stuff unless you just buy a new copy or buy the DLC and whatever stuff separately.
Yeah.
So I quite like that from CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, that's actually quite rare these days that
exactly
a publisher would give these kinds of major updates for free. They usually have the major update as a separate DLC, or then they just say, well, go get the enhanced version and pay another $50, $60.
Yep.
Whatever,
Exactly.
whatever it is in pounds. What's it, 39?
Yeah, between 40 and 50 pounds normally. Some games retail here for like $54.99, which is pretty fucking insane.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, and they've been just as good with The Witcher 3 up until this point as well. I mean, they did release 16 DLC pieces, as they called it. I mean, they're not necessarily as big as some games consider their DLCs, but they were all free, ranging from complete additional side quests to just like, oh, here's some new beards and haircuts and stuff for a character, or an alternative clothes for another character and stuff. But at the same time, they have been spending a lot of time and putting a lot of effort into both fixing bugs in the game and generally just improving the game, including improving the inventory system. It's a lot better now than it was when the game first came out. It's still not very responsive, but it's a lot better organized, and you can actually sort and organize stuff kind of the way you want. And I mean, just the general support they've been giving the game is quite intense. So, of course, they have paid for expansions now as well, but I mean, they're not expensive. They're like £8 or something. And it's another, like, I think the first expansion is, which is out and I have it. I just haven't started playing it because I still haven't finished the main storyline. But I think it's like £8 to buy the expansion, and it adds 10 hours or something, and the next expansion is going to be another 20 hours or something, and I think it'll be around the same price. I could be wrong on that, but I know it's definitely around 20 hours of gaming content. So.
And I think there was an announcement though that they are finally kind of ready to move forward from The Witcher 3. Now they're finally starting work on Cyberpunk 2077.
I did see something about that, which makes sense because I mean, they have one more expansion to release just, and then just patches and stuff. So it would definitely make sense to actually move on to the game they announced 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm actually quite looking forward to see what they can do with the kind of gameplay style that they have in Witcher 3. If they set it in a futuristic cyber cyberpunk whatever world. That could be quite entertaining.
Yeah. I think. I'm just in my opinion is to wait and see. I actually don't want. I don't want them to do The Witcher, the just kind of iterate on The Witcher and put it into a cyberpunk universe. I think they should be doing something quite different. But we'll see what happens. We don't know anything about the game because other than they decided they kind of just said that okay, now we are moving forward from this big game we did a while ago, and now we are starting to work on this other game we announced, like they announced it in 2012, so it's like been like 3 years.
Okay. 3 years even, yeah.
Yeah,
it's been a while, yes. So I mean, personally, I hope it at least ends up being like a third-person action RPG something, because, well, I'm a sucker for third-person games. They're kind of my favorite genre.
Yeah.
But even if it's first-person or something, I'm sure I'm decently confident it will be a good game at least. Not this. Chances that it'll be a horrible game are probably quite slim, considering they know how to make good games, and they've proven that.
Well, there's the chance always. We had.
Oh, true.
We did have 3D Realms and Gearbox making Duke Nukem Forever, and those companies also made good games.
Very, very true, but then again, they did have a lot of money that they lived off of for a good 12 years before they ran out 3D Realms, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, sure, I mean, from what I know of CD Projekt Red, most of the Witcher 3 development was funded via their GOG.com games platform, which is also kind of why I guess they have a lot of the freedoms they do have when it comes to their own games and what they do with them. There's no publisher forcing them to charge for DLCs and add many mini transactions and stuff, because they kind of have their own freedom to do what the fuck they want a bit. Somewhat similar to Rockstar. However, Rockstar is at least owned by Take-Two, but they do have a lot of freedom.
Anyway, I think this episode is should be ended. I think. Yes. I think.
I think we need to call it a day.
Yeah, I mean it's been exactly an hour, so I guess that's a good. This is a good place to cut the conversation.
Yep, exactly.
So you first. You tell us where we can find your thoughts, your ramblings, your whatever. If you feel like having, if you have an Instagram with nude pictures, you can tell us here.
I can't say I do. I have a feeling you do, though, since you brought it up. I guess we will see. I don't want to, but
I can tell you. I can tell you where it is, but then I'd have to kill you afterwards.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you for seeing them. No, thank you killing me. Thank you for anyone who's been listening. Apologies for the horrible jokes. My name is Jim. You can find me on Twitter at Jimme. That's pretty much as it sounds. And hopefully you, if you haven't already, go out and buy Witcher 3, because it is an amazing game. And it's definitely worth playing. If you play one game this year, I would probably say The Witcher should be it.
And I'm Eric, and my Twitter account it used to be Freyport, and now it's just Frey on FRAEON, which is my nickname pretty much everywhere. Yep. So, and that's that. And see you. I don't know how often we will be making these side quests. I guess. Well, we'll figure out a schedule. I hope we are. I hope we will be doing this more often.
Yep. The idea is they're quick, they're short, not much editing. We can get them out quickly. So whenever we have any interesting game to talk about, we should just do it together and record it. And see what comes out of it.
Games, series, whatever we feel like talking about. Anyway, that's that.
Yep.
Signing out.
Take care. Adios.